Champion Kansas City Chiefs aim for an unprecedented third straight Super Bowl, but the Texans are ready to end the dynasty. Then the Commanders, fresh off their first playoff win since 2006, take on the high-powered offense of the Detroit Lions. Start your game day with Pro Football today at 10 a.m. for pregame betting. Then stay in the action with in-game live game day, only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred, or just worked on the side, or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid. This Sunday, the Rams carry the weight of their city when they face the Eagles. Then it's a clash of MVP-caliber quarterbacks, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. SportsGrid has you covered all day, starting at 8 a.m. with FST for daily fantasy lineups. Lock in your picks with Pro Football today, and stay dialed in with real-time betting on in-game live game day, only on SportsGrid.
Was I just live there? What's going on, and welcome to Pro Football Today. Recap show. My name is Tom Vecchio. Chiefs come away with the win, 32-29, late field goal, pushing them over. Chiefs headed back to yet another big game to take on the Philadelphia Eagles. A matchup that a lot of people had anticipated. This was a matchup that a lot of people were talking about once the playoffs got started. The direct matchup, Chiefs versus the Eagles. Chiefs-Lions was another favorable matchup. And, of course, it is Chiefs-Eagles. The lines have already been posted, as you'd assume, and the movement has already begun on these lines. I saw a 47.5 total pop up. It has moved up to 48.5, 49.5 at some places. I saw the Chiefs are the favorite. They are minus 130 on the money line, minus 1.5. The Eagles money line, when I initially saw it, it was at plus 102. It has already moved to plus 110. This is obviously not a dramatic move when it's all said and done, as we're seeing, again, these odds changing just a little bit from where they were opening. And this is what we should be expecting over the course of the next 2 weeks. A little bit of line movement here or there. A little bit of line movement in terms of the total. Maybe, as it is sitting at 40, opened up at 48.5, it's up to 49. We probably see it touch 50 at some places. Of course, always shop for the best lines available. It'll touch 50, maybe 51. This is generally where we've seen some Super Bowls close over the past few seasons. Moving it to 2 obviously doesn't do a whole lot. I do not expect it to move to 2.5 in favor of the Chiefs. Maybe the money line change here or there, whatever it might be, but we have props up. And this is something I just wasn't sure if we were going to get them all up, what we were going to have posted. We have touchdown scores. We have passing props, receiving props, rushing props, you name it. They are already posted, at least as far as I'm seeing here on the FanDuel Sportsbook. So we will get into all of that over the course of the next hour up until 11 p.m. The one market that I'm not seeing any Super Bowl MVPs. So that is something to note. Obviously, hopefully that will come up, whether it's later tonight, tomorrow morning, whatever it might be. We can, of course, dive into that over the course of the week here, and the 2 weeks here, I should say, and the many programs across SportsGrid. But let's jump into at least a recap of what we saw in this game, because Throughout the week, I spoke heavily about this game on the early line on Tuesday morning with Joe Ranieri and Donnie Rightside. Again, on the early line with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside on Thursday. I was on Game Time Decisions with Kevin Walsh on Wednesday night talking about this game. In-game live yesterday with Joe Ranieri talking about this game extensively throughout the week. Not just this game, but the earlier game. All 4 props that I spoke about came through. Keon Coleman under 23.5 receiving yards, which I didn't just speak about, on these shows. I spoke about it on last Sunday's show when we first looked at these game lines. I said Keon Coleman under 23.5 receiving yards. That comes through. Marquise Hollywood Brown under 3.5 receptions. That came through. That was certainly close. He had 2 receptions on the first drive for the Chiefs. Ends up with 3 for 35 yards. Talked about Jane Daniels over 21.5 completions. That comes through. Jane Daniels over 15.5 for his longest rush. That came through. So 4-0 for those props on today. Absolutely awesome. That's why it's so important to be on some of these lines early. So Keon Coleman's line was 23.5. It moved down to 19.5 at one point. It closed at 20.5. And that is what we're going to be looking at over the course of the next hour for rushing, passing, receiving props. What can we see early and where do we expect these lines to be moving? But again, Chiefs come away with the victory, 32-29. Honestly, it was a pretty awesome performance from the Bills. Pretty awesome, all things considered. Great ground game from James Cook. Honestly, I don't want to put the blame on the defense, and we also should not be putting the blame on who was it there at the end? Dalton Kincaid, who didn't catch that last pass. The blame should not be on him. It shouldn't come down to a heave to keep them in a game, to put them in a spot to win. So all in all, a good game from the Bills. Obviously, there's no silver linings to take away when your season is over, but it was a good game from them when all things considered. Their defense needs some work, as we all kind of knew coming into the playoffs. On the Chiefs side of things, very interesting. Very, very interesting in terms of the usage we saw, with Xavier Worthy leading the way with 7 targets, 6 catches, 85 yards. An extremely, extremely quiet game from Travis Kelce with just the 4 targets for 2 catches for 19 yards. So you have to assume that's where a lot of people will be looking in the Super Bowl, saying, listen, when push comes to shove, it's great to have a rookie with Xavier Worthy involved. It's great to have a little bit of a veteran presence with DeAndre Hopkins, Juju Smith-Schuster, a little bit of a ground game. But when it's all said and done, Travis Kelce should be the one seeing the ball for the Chiefs when they get to the Super Bowl. I know a lot of people will probably be looking there, as I will be in some capacity, as we do have these lines posted. So I would expect a bit of a bounce-back game from Travis Kelce. Maybe not pushing to 100 yards as we've seen him do in playoff games, but certainly getting close to his prop, which is opening up at 65.5. We will certainly dive into that. I think it's notable that we're at least seeing, I'm going to say, a touch of clarity when it comes to the Chiefs' backfield. And this has been something that we've discussed on this show since Isaiah Pacheco has come back for the Chiefs. And again, we saw a bit of it last week. It's maybe not to the same degree, just because Kareem Hunt only had 8 carries last week. Pacheco had 5. A part of me wants to say, as I kind of mentioned at halftime, I don't know if Pacheco's 100% healthy. And seeing Kareem Hunt with 17 carries tonight when Isaiah Pacheco only had 5, I think that tells the story of, I want to say, what we should be seeing if things operate rationally once they get to the Super Bowl. Where maybe people were saying, this is a 50-50 split in the backfield for the Chiefs. Maybe it's looking like 70-30. And we can use some of that looking at the props once we start to dive into the Super Bowl, because 17 to 5 is a pretty big discrepancy. Again, last week versus the Texans, it was 8 to 5, for Kareem Hunt over Pacheco. But Pacheco still 5 carries for 18 yards was not good. Tonight, 5 carries for 12 yards. So regardless of the volume, the efficiency from Kareem Hunt is just so much better. Again, what we saw this week, what we saw for a portion of last week against the Texans. So Kareem Hunt being more involved, more Travis Kelce in 2 weeks, I should say, not next week, but in 2 weeks, Travis Kelce being more involved than he was tonight. It's not going to be 2 catches for 19 yards. And then we will see, I'm going to say, a good mix of Worthy, Juju Smith-Schuster, Hollywood Brown, and DeAndre Hopkins. And at times, it can be tough to pinpoint who's going to see, I would say, the lion's share of the work after Kelsey. It does appear to be Worthy, but even if we know it's going to be Worthy, after that, there's some opportunities in the passing market, the receiving market for the Chiefs, just because there's not a lot of clarity. So when we don't think Marquise Hollywood Brown is going to be involved, we can take unders. We can take unders on DeAndre Hopkins, who has been very quiet over the first 2 games of the postseason for the Chiefs. Maybe we will see Juju play a big role in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl, as we saw him in the past with the Chiefs. And then once we get to the Eagles side of things, obviously we know where their offense starts with Saquon Barkley, but it was a huge game from A.J. Brown today. Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, we can break down a little bit, and we will go on from there. So we're coming up against a break right now. Chiefs coming away with the victory, 32-29. Game hits the over. Chiefs cover the spread. We have the Super Bowl on tap. The odds are already out. The line movements are already happening, and the props are all out. We will break down all of this over the next hour up until 11 p.m. Eastern. Stay tuned right here on Pro Football Today. The recap show, myself, Tom Vecchio, Chiefs, Eagles on tap. 2 weeks from today, we will go through everything we have as of right now. Stay tuned.
It's Championship Sunday. Can rookie sensation Jaden Daniels clip the Eagles' wings on his way to Super Bowl history? Then, 2 teams that know each other all too well face off in the AFC in the Bills and Chiefs. SportsGrid has you covered all day Sunday. Start at 7 a.m. with FST, followed by Pro Football Today. And stay with us for in-game live game day. Only on SportsGrid.
One of the weirdest nicknames I've heard in fighting. There's people have some strange nicknames at times, but the Lemon Killer. What do you even make of that? What is that about?
I don't even know what that means, but I'm gonna squeeze him like a lemon on the day we fight, and he's gonna pop.
Only on SportsGrid.
Second full year under new ownership to really be where they are right now for this Commanders franchise is one of the best stories of this NFL season.
Went to the playoffs and won 2 road games. Now we're going to use that. Hey, rookie quarterback on? No more rookie quarterback. He's already arrived in the NFL as a legitimate quarterback. And can you say, Ben, is he already top 5?
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York team has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
What's going on, and welcome to Pro Football Today. Post-game show, my name is Tom Vecchio. Chiefs come away with the win, 32-29. Game hits the over. Chiefs cover the spread. Obviously, the money line hits. They move on to a Super Bowl and are looking for their 3rd straight. They're taking on the Eagles. The lines have already been posted. Player props are posted. We have a ton to get through over the course of the next hour, or just shy of an hour leading up until 11 p.m. Eastern. So 49.5 over-under is where I'm seeing things again. I saw a 47.5 flash real quickly, 48.5, Spread is -1.5 in favor of the Chiefs. They are technically listed as the road team. We do have the money line. It opened up, around -124, so it's up to -130 on FanDuel, +110 for the Eagles. It is -125 for the Chiefs on the money line over on DK, and +105 for the Eagles. I am not seeing any MVP markets, as we have talked about that extensively since the playoffs have started over the past few weeks on these recap shows. But we do have player props, so we do have touchdown bets for these games, or this game. So let's get into it. Saquon, -190 over on FanDuel, -175 over on DK. Hurts is +100 on both sides. Kelsey +120, +125 over on DK, a little bit higher. And then we moved on the list. Hunt, Worthy, Brown, Smith, Pacheco, Marquise Brown, Dallas Goedert, et cetera, et cetera. Right from the jump, Worthy's been involved a lot, and +190 I think is a fair number for him. I don't know if I like that price. Devonta Smith at 2-1 I think is good. Dallas Goedert is where we start to get interesting at +330. Where are we going to see? And frankly, DeAndre Hopkins, listen, maybe I'm buying into, I don't want to say too much nostalgia with, but how good of a receiver he was, but they brought him in for a reason, and seeing a +550 number hung on DeAndre Hopkins for a touchdown in the Super Bowl, the sole reason that they brought him in is to help out this offense after Rice went down in week 3, week 4, week 2, can't remember, that game at the Chargers. Man, DeAndre Hopkins at +550 is certainly at least a bit interesting to me. So, we're not going to say Saquon at -190. We can make an argument for A.J. Brown. We can make an argument for Worthy. But I think the Dallas Goedert, DeAndre Hopkins kind of tier is where I want to start to look, at least for the most value available for the players. Let's get into the player props, because there's so much going on for all of this. Hurts, and this is my generally first look at these. I opened it up and looked at them, but not really given a whole thought to it. So Mahomes, 251.5 passing. Hurts is 210. They're both at 1.5 passing touchdowns. Hurts is +162 to the over. Mahomes is -164 to the over. Most passing yards in the game, of course, -240 for Mahomes. Let's give a check over on DK to see if there's a big discrepancy. Passing touchdowns, passing yards, roughly the same. Yards, Mahomes is just a touch higher, 256.5, and Hurts is 213. They're just a bit higher over on DK. It's interesting to note that at least DK has the passing attempts, and they also have interceptions up. Hurts is +134 for an interception. Mahomes is -107 for an interception. The completions and passing attempts market, of course, some of my favorites when it comes to the NFL. Passing attempts, Mahomes is 35.5, Hurts is 26.5. Completions, it's 24.5 and 18.5 for Hurts. The Hurts 18.5 over on completions is a bit interesting, and then getting Mahomes also over 24.5 completions is a spot that I may look. 24.5, it is +104. It's -129 on the under. Generally, I like to be early on props, as I've always talked about. Getting on lines early can be a massive, massive advantage, and getting some nice closing line value is huge. It's not to say you bet a player at under 50 and his line moves to 47.5, 46, he's guaranteed to hit the under. But it's no, the market is moving in the right direction, and you are ahead of the market. That is obviously always, always good to have, and hopefully that will be in your favor more times than not over the course of the long run. So I don't mind a completion bet on Mahomes, although I do think Kareem Hunt has been solid for the Chiefs in the backfield. Rubber meets the road in the Super Bowl. It's time Mahomes needs to have the ball in his hands when it's all said and done. Seeing 18 of 26 today is obviously a very, very low numbers on both attempts and completions for him, as we saw generally last week, 16 and 25. But we also saw some pretty long sustained drives from the Bills, and at times last week versus the Texans. Looking back throughout the regular season, when push came to shove, we saw the ball in Mahomes' hands. He ended the regular season again, didn't play the last week of the season versus Denver, but 38, 41, 38, 37, 46, 37, 33, 42, 44, 38 passing attempts from Mahomes once we hit the end of October on. So he is generally hitting, one game, he's at 33. Every other game, he's at 37 or higher. So when we see a line hung of passing attempts at 35.5, again, when it's push comes to shove, it should be Mahomes passing the ball. So I do like the 35.5 on Mahomes attempts, especially as the total is risen, from 47, 48.5 up to 49. If the market is expecting points, that should mean more possessions. Again, essentially just more bites at the apple for Mahomes. So it's not posted over on FanDuel. I am seeing the 35.5 on Mahomes passing attempts. So this would be the first spot that I'm going to jump in when it comes to the passing market. I really do like Mahomes over 35.5 passing attempts. So we can look there. The completions are essentially correlated in a sense with it. He's going to be passing the ball more. He will completing the ball more. At least you would like to hope so or think so that he would be able to get there. But 35.5 passing attempts minus 104 on DK is the first spot that I'm looking when it comes to any of these Super Bowl props. So we're coming up against a break right now. We will continue to dive into all this. We will run through each different market. We can even dive into some defensive props if we think there's going to be sacks, as we have seen these quarterbacks take some sacks over the course of the playoffs. We can look at maybe the MVP market. Hopefully will be posted before this show is all said and done, as we did see that happen last week. But we will get into all this. Stay tuned to the other side of this break coming up. Pro Football Today recap show.
It's Championship Sunday. Can rookie sensation Jaden Daniels clip the Eagles' wings on his way to Super Bowl history? Then, two teams that know each other all too well face off in the AFC in the Bills and Chiefs. SportsGrid has you covered all day Sunday. Start at 7 a.m. with FST, followed by Pro Football Today. And stay with us for in-game live game day. Only on SportsGrid.
One of the weirdest nicknames I've heard in fighting. There's people have some strange nicknames at times, but the Lemon Killer. What do you even make of that? What is that about?
I don't even know what that means, but I'm gonna squeeze him like a lemon on the day we fight, and he's gonna pop.
Only on SportsGrid.
Second full year under new ownership to really be where they are right now for this Commanders franchise is one of the best stories of this NFL season.
Went to the playoffs and won 2 road games. Now we're going to use that. Hey, rookie quarterback on? No more rookie quarterback. He's already arrived in the NFL as a legitimate quarterback. And can you say, Ben, is he already top 5?
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
What's going on, and welcome to Pro Football Today post-game show. My name is Tom Vecchio. Chiefs come away with the win over the Eagles. Chiefs come away with the win over the Eagles. Chiefs come away with the win. They're playing the Eagles in the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks. Hopefully, I'm not saying that in a couple of weeks and foreshadowing that the Chiefs do come away with another win. But regardless of that, we are taking a look at everything Super Bowl with these props being posted. Let's get into it, because since the time that we went to the last break, and now we have seen the Super Bowl MVP markets finally come back online. on both FanDuel and DraftKings. They're posted, and the top of the board is the top of the board. It's what everyone was expecting. Mahomes plus 100, Saquon plus 300, Jalen Hurts plus 370. That's at least over on FanDuel. Mahomes is plus 110 on DK. Saquon's plus 250 over on DK, and Hurts is plus 300. That's the top three. That was always going to be the top three if these two teams were going to meet. Then there's this big drop-off, right? And it's this big drop-off to what everyone would expect next. Travis Kelce, A.J. Brown, David Worthy. And then there's another kind of gap to Marquise Brown, Kareem Hunt, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I talked about Saquon a couple weeks ago about having a Super Bowl ticket on him. I made the argument for, it was before the Lions game, I was making an argument for Jahmyr Gibbs. I was making an argument for Derrick Henry before their loss to the Bills that, if they were to make the Super Bowl, the price that you have him, 2-3 weeks ago is not the same that it would be. And Saquon was 15, 16 to 1 at the time that I spoke about him. He's plus 300 now. So again, being on lines early is always massively important. When I was on Game Time Decisions on Wednesday night with Kevin Walsh, we were talking about, what would be the outcome if Hurts doesn't win it, nor Saquon wins it, and this is the MVP, of course, for the Super Bowl. This is obviously in a Philly win scenario. Would it be someone like a Jalen Carter? Would it be someone like Zach Bond? High-impact defensive players. And the same argument I'm making about these players, you can make for Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, high-impact, game-changing, multiple sacks, fumble recovery, those type of things. Those are real scenarios. Again, defensive players do not win the award very, very often. It's generally quarterback, and then it would be skill player, running back, wide receiver. We have seen receivers win over the past few years. We did see Cooper Kupp win a couple years ago. We saw Julian Edelman win in 2019. And there's a defensive player sprinkled here or there. So MVP market is back up. If you're interested, take a look at those odds there. Let's get back to some of the player props for this. Let's turn to the receiving market. Let's touch on tight ends to start. If we did, we can jump there. Because again, Kelce is a player that everyone's going to be interested in. He was 67.5 today. His prop, it's down to 65.5. Dallas Goedert, obviously on the other side, 45.5. The receiving, or I should say the receptions for Dallas Goedert is interesting. It's 3.5. It is heavily juiced to the over at 168. Now that is, of course, just over on FanDuel. Let's check over on DK real quick. Now, Dallas Goedert's already up to 4.5 with plus 105 on the over on DK. So that is noteworthy. A.J. Brown is 5.5 receptions on DK, and he is sitting at 4.5 on FanDuel. And again, it's minus 168 juice to the over. So we are seeing some discrepancies in the market, of course, and obviously the juice would indicate that, it's trending in the way of moving to a 5.5. So the question becomes is if A.J. Brown were to not hit 4.5 or, over 4.5, have 5 receptions for the Eagles, what does that mean? Does that mean Devonta Smith's having a huge game? Saquon Barkley having a huge game on the ground? So you can try and find some correlations between some of these bets. Again, this is also depending on what you are expecting for this game. I assume a lot of people have Eagles futures, Chiefs futures, all these sorts of things. And there's different ways to, bet the game. You already have a Chiefs future. Do you want to be betting on a ton of Eagles props? Because if the players are doing well, what does that mean for the Chiefs, ticket overall, which may be worth X amount more money? So these are all the questions, a lot of people are going to be asking themselves, myself included, over the next 2 weeks. I have a future set. If I'm betting on things that is counterintuitive to that future, I'm essentially going to be eating into some of that profit. Now, unless everything wins, then we're all green. We're coming up against a break right now. We'll dig into more of these receiving and rushing props. Obviously, the rushing market with Saquon is going to be a very, very big part of this game and what people are going to be breaking down. But it's sitting at 114 now. We will continue to look at all this pro football today. Coming up against a break. I'll see you guys on the other side.
It's Championship Sunday. Can rookie sensation Jaden Daniels clip the Eagles' wings on his way to Super Bowl history? Then, two teams that know each other all too well face off in the AFC in the Bills and Chiefs. SportsGrid has you covered all day Sunday. Start at 7 a.m. with FST, followed by Pro Football Today. And stay with us for in-game live game day. Only on SportsGrid.
One of the weirdest nicknames I've heard in fighting. There's people have some strange nicknames at times, but the Lemon Killer. What do you even make of that? What is that about?
I don't even know what that means, but I'm gonna squeeze him like a lemon on the day we fight, and he's gonna pop.
Only on SportsGrid.
Second full year under new ownership to really be where they are right now for this Commanders franchise is one of the best stories of this NFL season.
Went to the playoffs and won 2 road games. Now we're going to use that. Hey, rookie quarterback on? No more rookie quarterback. He's already arrived in the NFL as a legitimate quarterback. And can you say, Ben, is he already top 5?
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
What's going on? Welcome to Pro Football Today recap show. My name is Tom Vecchio. We are going through the Super Bowl odds that have been posted, of course, across FanDuel and DraftKings. We are taking a look at, the early lines on things as we always do on these recap shows. We want to be in on the lines as early as possible. We ran through the passing props for the quarterbacks, 251, 254.5 or so for Mahomes, 210 to 13.5 or so for Jalen Hurts, depending on where you do your shopping, as my co-host Adam Kaufman likes to say. And we are going through the rest of these, the receiving market. We touched on the Super Bowl market, et cetera, et cetera. For the passing, again, it opened up at 208 for Hurts. That has risen a little bit to 210. The receiving market is very interesting because I mentioned, people are expecting a Kelsey rebound. Not too much of a surprise there, but what role are we going to be seeing from A.J. Brown, Xavier Worthy, Devonta Smith, Marquise Brown? Let's just call it the top 2 receivers from each team. Again, A.J. Brown's line is 4.5, minus 168 on the over. And that number is 5.5 over on TK. This is when it comes to the receptions. The same thing can be said about Dallas Goedert, as I mentioned. Devonta Smith, I think, has the most interesting line because, A, we're getting good value on it at minus 120 for over 4.5 receptions. And we're not asking for a whole lot. Now, depending on where the lines move and where the total moves, seeing a good amount of points in this game obviously shouldn't be too much of a surprise for people. Now, I don't expect either team to be, I would hope not, to be up by 14, 17, 20 points where it's some type of blowout. And one team is just forced into one specific type of game. But keeping this within 7, maybe 10 points, I think is where we should be seeing things. So see consistent involvement from the main players on offense. I think that's where we should be looking. So seeing Devonta Smith over 4.5 receptions, I think that is a rational way to view this game where, again, it wouldn't be a surprise to see the Chiefs divert extra defensive effort to someone like A.J. Brown, who, if we look back to the last Super Bowl that they played, A.J. Brown, if I remember correctly, before I even look it up, I'm going to say he had that 61-yard reception, right? It was 61 yards down that sideline to the Chiefs. It was 45 yards, excuse me, as I just check it here on his game log. he's been known to at least beat them deep at times. So if there's going to be extra defensive effort diverted to A.J. Brown, obviously they have to be worried about stacking the box with Saquon Barkley. This is a different run game compared to when the Eagles faced them last in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. This may leave an opening for Devonta Smith and or Dallas Goedert. Now we see 4 catches and 4 targets for Devonta Smith in all 3 of the playoff games thus far. Now we did see a very solid 6 targets, 6 receptions, 7 targets against Dallas to close out the regular season, at least his last game. 6 receptions, 11 receptions, 4 and 4. Very consistent role in the passing game. So the fact that we're getting a 4.5 number is rather interesting. Now, again, I said it was 4.5 minus 120 on FanDuel. It's 4.5 minus 112 over on DK. So Devonta Smith over 4.5 receptions, minus 112 over on DK. Really do like that. Now, the question becomes, who's not going to be playing a role in the passing game and or running game for either of these teams? Will we see Saquon continue to run things 120 some odd yards every game? The line's 114.5. Now, it's a bit lower than what we saw this week going up against the Commanders. It was, creeping towards 130. Will we see Kareem Hunt continue to play a solid role? Will we see Isaiah Pacheco continue to take a step back in the rushing offense overall? So my immediate lean for this would be, I think it would be, I don't want to say fading Pacheco, but again, I just don't know if he has enough juice. And it might be a thing where he's just not at 100% health. He starts the season off super strong. He comes back against the Raiders the day after Thanksgiving, 7 carries, 14 carries, 13 carries, 9, 6. That was to close out the regular season. Then in the playoffs, it's been 5 carries in each of these first 2 games for them. So when we're seeing Pacheco with a 6.5 rushing attempt prop, that I'm looking at the under. Now it's 6.5. Under is minus 140 on FanDuel for rushing attempts. For Pacheco, it's 6.5. It's minus 118 over on DK. So an under on Pacheco rushing attempts. I do think he can play a solid role, as we saw today, a little bit in the passing game. But again, even when he has seen the ball, he has not been effective, and Kareem Hunt has just factually been more effective when at least we're looking at yards per carry. So now this does correlate a little bit with what I just spoke about before, which would be Patrick Mahomes over on passing attempts. If we're going to see the ball be moved through the air, as we do know the Eagles have a very good run defense, which they kind of held things in check with the Commanders today. And we saw Daniels rack up some yards through the air. Now, granted, it was a passing game script. The Eagles were playing a little bit safe, a little bit of a prevent defense at times, but I'm kind of liking Pacheco under on attempts. So under 6.5 attempts for Isaiah Pacheco, it's sitting at minus 118 on DK. It's minus 140 on FanDuel. So always take the best props where you can find them. So I'm expecting a good amount of passing in this game, I think, is the initial lean that I would have. And, could we see Kareem Hunt get to that 40-50 mark? His line's 45.5. Do we see him get close to it? Sure. The question becomes is, what do we do with Saquon Barkley? 114.5 is his rushing prop. 22.5 is his rushing attempt, and his rushing plus receiving is sitting at 132.5. What do we do with Saquon in this game? Because I have to assume that this number is only going to increase. It's not going to stay at 114. It'll probably make its way up to 116, 118, which may not seem like a big difference, but moving 4 yards when it's already that high is a big, big difference. The market I will always look at for Saquon will be Saquon over longest rush. Do we like the Saquon over longest rush, which is now up at 24.5? At least that's where it's listed over on DK. It's not listed on FanDuel yet. We've consistently seen Saquon break off these big runs. And it's not just, 20-yard chunk plays, 25, 30 yards. It's 45, 60, 70 some odd yards. That's what we're getting from Saquon. All it takes is one extra broken tackle, one extra juke and Euro step kind of thing, and Saquon's going for 60 or 70 yards. So instead of betting on 114, 115 some odd rushing yards, we can see Saquon hit the under on that, and he still hits the over on 24.5. Now, they are largely correlated. We don't want to be going for a skill shot here and take the under on one and the over on another. So I would ultimately lean with just over 24.5 for his longest rushing attempt. It's just what we have seen time and time again for him. So I like an under on Pacheco in terms of rushing attempts, the over on Saquon for his longest rush, over 24.5 for the longest rush, over 6.5, under 6.5 rushing attempts for Isaiah Pacheco. So we will continue to sort through all of these. Obviously, there's discrepancies in some of these lines, and you can, I don't want to say find middles when we're looking at 4.5 receptions or 5.5 receptions, but of course there are different things that we need to break down, not only today, but of course as the week goes on and on. So Devonta Smith over 4.5 receptions, sitting on minus 112 over on DK. Isaiah Pacheco under 6.5 rushing attempts, and then Saquon over 24.5 for his longest rush. You, of course, can find these here. You'll find these, of course, all over my Twitter at Tom_Vecchio1, tweeting these out throughout the week as I do every week, not just for this, for all sports across the board. You will catch those all here, there, wherever it might be. So we're coming up against another break right now. We will continue to dive throughout these props. Maybe there's going to be some line movement. Maybe you see some things trending in a certain direction. We'll catch these before they move and get out ahead of the lines. We're coming up against the break. Stay tuned. Pro Football Today recap show. Other side of this break.
This guy Ovechkin, how he was injured and missed all that time, and the fact that he's still on pace to pass Gretzky.
I think everybody's rooting for Ovechkin at this point in time, and I think he'll do it as well. So it's a feat that no one ever thought Scotty would be broken. It's going to be broken, and it's probably going to be broken because he's not going to stop shooting.
Pharrell, coast to coast, only on SportsGrid.
We all know MVPs don't win the Super Bowl. It's not about MVPs, man. The only MVP, fine. Win the MVP in the Super Bowl. Nobody cares about the MVP in the regular season besides people that bet on it, the actual player themselves, and their agent that's getting a cut of the bonus money. Other than that, who cares? What do you care who wins the MVP? Like I said, unless you bet on it. Right? If you bet on it, fine. Then I guess you care.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's Championship Sunday. Can rookie sensation Jaden Daniels clip the Eagles' wings on his way to Super Bowl history? Then, two teams that know each other all too well face off in the AFC in the Bills and Chiefs. SportsGrid has you covered all day Sunday. Start at 7 a.m. with FST, followed by Pro Football Today. And stay with us for in-game live game day. Only on SportsGrid.
What's going on, and welcome to Pro Football Today, a post-game show. My name is Tom Vecchio. Chiefs come away with a victory over the Bills. Super close, 32-29. Game goes over. Chiefs cover the spread. They are on to the Super Bowl, looking for their third straight Super Bowl, taking on the Eagles. Lines have already been posted. Lines are already moving for the Super Bowl. It opened up at 47.5. I saw that flash super quickly. 48.5. It has moved up to 49.5 for the total. It is a 1.5 point spread for the quote unquote road Chiefs. The Eagles are the home team. And the Eagles opened up at plus 102, plus 104 on the money line. That is gone up to plus 110. We went through the Super Bowl market. Of course, it's Mahomes leading the way. It's Saquon. It's Hurts. It's that trio up at the top. There's a bit of a drop off to the Travis Kelce, the A.J. Browns of the world, that tier. Xavier Worthy, then is another drop off to some of those other players. You want to take a long shot on a defensive player like George Karlaftis, Jalen Carter, someone getting involved, creating disruptive plays. Those are always a little bit fun to get to. And these are just the basic props. These are not any of the fun, quote unquote, novelty props, which will come out. And has to be noted that they are sometimes only legal in certain states, where you can bet on the length of the anthem, the color of the Gatorade, after the post game, this, that, the other thing. Those are all fun to get into. I would suggest that you do not have large bets on those. Those are fun bets, as people like to say, a little bit of pizza and beer money on those. You're not putting large units on those. Those are like a quarter unit bets just to have a little bit of fun for the coin toss, wherever it might be. You don't want to be putting actual significant action on the color of a Gatorade. So let's move into the rest of these props, because there's a lot to break down. We started talking about the Saquon prop. What do we want to be doing there? But the rest of the rushing is important. Kareem Hunt up at 45.5. I'm going to say the lead back for the Chiefs. At least has shown to be the lead back for the Chiefs in the postseason. Out-carried Pacheco today, which is why I'm interested in Pacheco under rushing attempts, which is at 6.5, minus 118. I just tweeted that out, spoke about it here. Pacheco's number is at 22.5 for rushing yards. I don't have interest in that. There's a chance that he still goes under on his attempts and maybe goes over on that. He breaks off one or two carries for 8-10 yards. He has 2 carries that get him close to 20, just gets an extra. I just don't expect him playing a large role in terms of volume of carries. The Hurts Mahomes is the more interesting portion of the rushing. We know Saquon's going to be up at 114, 115 when it's all said and done, whatever it might be. Let me just check over on DK what Saquon is listed at for the sake of he's 117 over on DK. So a little bit of a discrepancy there, but Jalen Hurts, 37.5, Patrick Mahomes, 28.5 when it comes to their rushing yards. What have we seen from, I don't want to say Hurts, but what have we seen from Mahomes in the postseason? 43 yards today, 11 carries today? That's interesting. That's interesting for Patrick Mahomes when his number is at 6.5 rushing attempts and his number is sitting at 28.5 for rushing yards. And we have consistently seen Mahomes scramble out of the backfield, whether he's pushed out of the backfield in terms of just the pressure getting to him and he has to scramble, or there's a couple design run plays like that we saw today in 4th down, these scrambles out to the flat. So Mahomes at 28.5, he's at 28.5 yards on both DK and FanDuel. Slightly different juice, minus 114 to the over. On FanDuel, it's minus 108 over on DK. The attempts is minus 105 for over 6.5 rushing attempts over on DK, and it's plus 102 over on FanDuel for over 6.5 rushing attempts. That is interesting. Let's give a quick glance here at Mahomes over the past few seasons. 7 carries last week versus Houston, only 14 yards. 11 carries today versus Buffalo, 43 yards. Let's look back to last season real quickly. 9 in the Super Bowl, 66 yards. 6 versus Baltimore, 15 yards. 6 versus Buffalo, 19 yards. Only 2 versus Miami in the wild card, but they were up that entire game. 2 carries for 41 yards. Season before that versus Philly in the Super Bowl, 6 carries, 43, 3 for 8, 3 for 8. 7 carries. Okay, so he's getting to that, I'm going to say 4, 5, 6 range more often than he's getting to that 7, 8 up to 11 as we saw today. So it's reasonable to say that 6 is a great number for him. And seeing a 6 with plus money on the over would be the only bet to make. If you see 6.5 as we do on DK, 6.5 with minus odds, minus 106, that's not the bet to make. 6.5 with a little bit of plus money is an okay bet. I'm far more interested when it comes to the rushing yards for Mahomes compared to the rushing attempts. 28.5 rushing yards, far more interesting than the attempts. So I'm going to be in on 40, 28.5. It's minus 108 on DK. So I'm going to go with minus 108 for Mahomes on DK instead of minus 114 for over 28.5 rushing yards. And obviously, as I've said time and time again, the same that can be said about rushing yards and receiving yards. The joke I make for receiving yards is that a player can have literally 99 receiving yards on one catch. He can't have over 5.5 catches on one catch. I know it sounds silly, but a player can fly over their yardage total. You can't pile up 6 catches by having one catch. And the same thing can be said about rushing yards and rushing attempts, the point being. So looking like a Mahomes game, a little bit on the ground. Again, defense from the Eagles bringing that pressure, forcing Mahomes out of the pocket, and or some of the design run plays, which we saw today. Mahomes getting out on the flat, scrambling, picking up yards. We want the yards before the attempts. That's where I'll go with Mahomes. We're coming up against the break. We have one more segment after this. I say we got a pretty solid first glance at things. Obviously, across the next 2 weeks, all over SportsGrid, you will find people breaking things down left and right, what they like, what they don't like, leans, sides, totals, player props, touchdowns, MVPs, novelty bets, you name it. All of this will be here over the next 2 weeks. So stay tuned. We have one more segment coming up, but let's talk about, I guess, more receiving, because since there's so many players, we haven't really talked about some of these secondary or tertiary players. Do we expect to see Saquon involved in the passing game? Wherever it might be, stay tuned. Other side of this break, Pro Football Today recap show.
It's Championship Sunday. Can rookie sensation Jaden Daniels clip the Eagles' wings on his way to Super Bowl history? Then, two teams that know each other all too well face off in the AFC in the Bills and Chiefs. SportsGrid has you covered all day Sunday. Start at 7 a.m. with FST, followed by Pro Football Today. And stay with us for in-game live game day. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
What's going on, and welcome to Pro Football Today recap show. My name is Tom Vecchio. Taking a look at the Super Bowl. Chiefs taking on the Eagles. 49.5 over-under is a 1.5 point spread in favor of the quote-unquote road Chiefs. The total has jumped up just the total. Again, it opened at, let's just call it 48, 48.5, moved up to 49. The money line on the Eagles moved just a touch. It was plus 102, plus 104. It's up to plus 110 right now. You know, do we want to be early on these game lines? Which I assume a lot of people do. last football game of the season. Would I be surprised to see this move from 49.5 to 50? Maybe 51, probably not. I don't really think the spread will move too much. Maybe it gets to 2 points at some places, -2 in favor of the Chiefs. I just don't see that as a big factor in this. The total would be more interesting, obviously, hanging the 49 compared to hanging a 50 or 51. As we've always talked about on pregame show with Dave Sharapan, changing the number from a 49, 50, 51, these are important things for books and what they look to do. So it's not surprised to see it open up at 48.5 and see the number move up as the bets start to come in. But we've talked about touchdown props and the variety of them that we have. Saquon's number has already moved. As I said at the top of the segment, it was sitting at -190 or so. It's now -210. Jalen Hurts was +100. He's down to +105. Kelsey was +120. He's at +115 now. Again, these may not seem like massive moves, moving, just a few cents when it's all said and done. But again, it is good to be early on lines as often as you possibly can. It may not matter for one bet here on 1 week in one game, but over the course of a season, over the course of multiple seasons, being early on bets will always be a good thing. And then again, in line with that would be shopping for the best lines available, as we do see some discrepancies in terms of these player props when we do see Mahomes passing yards sitting about 256.5 over on DK, and it's only 251.5 over on FanDuel. Now, what have we already talked about? Let's give this a quick recap on some of the bets that I've already jumped in on. Again, want to be as early as possible in some of these lines. Talked about Mahomes over 35.5 passing attempts. 35 passing attempts, that's where the Chiefs offense obviously will be flowing through, despite the fact that I think Kareem Hunt has been pretty solid in the backfield for the Chiefs this season, especially today. The ball's going to be in Mahomes' hands when it's all said and done. So I do like the attempts. It is now posted on FanDuel. It was not posted when I was talking about it earlier. It's 35.5 still on DK, and it's 36.5 over on FanDuel. So jumped in early on DK. We got a great number there. It's attempt higher on FanDuel. Talked about Isaiah Pacheco under 6.5 rushing attempts. Got a better number over on DK. It was 6.5 -140. Let's just double check what it is. It's still -140 over on FanDuel. We want under 6.5 rushing attempts for Pacheco, which at the time when I spoke about it a few minutes ago, it was -118. It has already moved to -127. Again, minor differences. But when it's all said and done, we want to be as early as possible on some of these bets. And of course, I will reiterate all of this tomorrow morning at 10:32, roughly 12 hours from now, when I'm on the early line, talking about these exact same things. We want to be early on these bets. Also talking about Devonta Smith over 4.5 receptions, sitting at -112. We found a better number for that over on DK compared to FanDuel, sitting at -120. Now, would I be surprised to see a Dallas Goedert and or A.J. Brown reception total move up on FanDuel to match DK, because it's -168 for over 4.5 for A.J. Brown. Realistically, A.J. Brown should be having more than 4.5 receptions, called 5-6 receptions, if the Eagles are going to stay competitive in this game. As we already see a 5.5 line for receptions for A.J. Brown, it is plus money at +101 over on DK. So we're wrapping things up now. Super Bowl on tap 2 weeks from today. The Chiefs are the very, very slight favorite. Congrats if you had a Chiefs AFC ticket. Congrats if you had an Eagles NFC ticket. Congrats if you nailed the Chiefs versus Eagles exact matchup. I know a lot of people have Chiefs futures, Eagles futures. If you have a Chiefs over Eagles future, congrats on holding that ticket. That is awesome. Congrats if you have an Eagles over Chiefs direct forecast. Either of those bets are awesome to have. If you have the futures, that is awesome. We're coming up against the end right now. Again, 49.5 over under for the Super Bowl. Eagles, Chiefs, 1.5 point spread. Great early look at these props as we have plenty of 2 weeks to break all this down. Good luck with your bets. I'll see you guys tomorrow.